Hey, what's up, Hog Pods? Thanks for tuning in this week to Hog Knows One podcast. I'm here with a cool friend of mine, Stephen Cowles with Dead Styx. So for the record, Stephen, can you state your business name and kind of how you came up with that, and then talk about your logo a little bit, how you designed that?
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Thanks for having me on today. Everybody else out there listening, I appreciate you giving us the time. I was thinking about a name for a long time, try this, try that, bounce certain things off of people, and I just couldn't come up with the right thing, and one day I said, man, all they do is look like dead sticks laying, when you pull out your tray, a bunch of new ones, new hatchlings, some of them will play dead, right? Of course, the hog knows. And I said, look like a bunch of dead sticks. So I said, well, let's play on that. So I said, well, what can I take? I wonder if I can play with the word sticks. So I played it with STYX. And everybody knows the band, but that's not where I got it from. It's actually a river in the underground world in the Greek mythology. But the word actually means shuddering and expresses loathing of death. So, shuddering and hating death is what that means. It's a perfect thing for a hog nose. They play in dead, they hate it, and it just fit really nice. So that's why I changed it to Dead Styx, STYX.
Cool.
And that's where it came from.
Tell me about your logo design. How'd you come up with that?
I got online, and there's a company that has where like a bunch of artists go to. I can't remember the exact name of it, but it's a bunch of artists. You can hire them to do it, and it's pretty easy. Go there and pay their fee, and they design you something. And this lady designed after a few changes, she came up with the logo in different colors.
Very cool. So moving on to the second question. Obviously, hognose is your focus species. Any former or current species you'd like to talk about? I know you've had an extensive collection before. Tell us about that.
Well, back in the 90s, when I first started getting into it, I had to have a little bit of everything. I just got overloaded with carpet pythons, ball pythons, corn snakes. I had it all. I had green tree pythons, boas. Amongst hognose and corn snakes. But the hognose is one of my favorite. And actually, I remember buying some albinos, and they were $1,500 a piece back in the 90s. So I was working with them for quite a long time. But yeah, my favorite back then, other than the hognose, is probably Vietnamese blue beauty rat snakes. Those are pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
They're big, and they have a statement when you pull them out.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then
I ended up taking a break. My friend started racing motocross, so I sold off everything. And then when he got of age and doing his own bills and his own racing, I wanted to get back into my snake collection, and I wanted just to stay true to what I liked, and that was the hognose. So back in 2016, I bought me some hognoses and been going at it since.
Perfect. And so, what's your favorite hognose morph, and why do you like it?
That's a tough question because there's several that I really, really love, and I have those. But the sable line and where it can go is exceptional. There's such a variable that could be, in that, and there's so much more to be made yet. I mean, I can't believe how many combinations are in front of us, and it's going to take many generations to even get there. And but yeah, that's what it's fun. I love the lavenders. The lavenders are awesome. Of course, the permafrost also.
So, question number 4 is a little deeper question. I'm sure you've given it some thought because I've sent it to you ahead of time. But any frustrations with the hobby? Now, this could include the market with other breeders. It could be the information that's available. It could be husbandry related. Any frustrations? And if so, any steps that you find yourself as a breeder taking to kind of right the wrongs that you see?
Yeah, I thought about this quite deeply. First of all, I want to say the Hognose community are pretty special people. I make friends everywhere I go in the Hognose industry. I've really not had an issue, and I think it's a great bunch of people. Um, as far as hognose husbandry and stuff, what's frustrating is that egg bind. When those females get egg bound, it's really heart wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lost a few over the years, some really nice animals. So ain't much you can really do except, keep at it and try different things. I always ask other breeders, but, it's just part of the game, I guess. I just make sure my girls are of size and able to be, bred as an adult and not try to push them at 2 years old. I don't know, 2 years old just isn't, I don't know if people do it or not, but I don't.
It's interesting, I've got one particular female that I didn't produce. She was bought, and I grew her up. I think I got her when she was maybe 100 grams or so. When she got gravid, it was like last year she was gravid, but she retained or absorbed, and that was real frustrating because I was really anticipating some cool stuff. But I noticed she developed like an area, I don't know if it's fatty tissue or what, but like right around the cloaca. And it's not real noticeable, but when I look at it, I'm kind of like, that's just interesting looking. So I've tried to kind of scale back on my girls to make sure they have adequate weight, but not obesity, because I kind of wonder sometimes if they don't, just like any other animal, get, stretch marks or, evidence of fat retention and stretching of the, adipose tissues. And, it's just real interesting. So she's currently gravid now. And so I'm just going to watch her with that area and see. But that area did reduce when I, had her lose some weight. So you ever seen anything like that before?
No, I haven't. I have some bigger girls, that when they're normal, they're 400 grams, which is a big female, and I don't know, they do pretty good. Those girls do good. They do good. But also, I've bred them at 180 grams, and they might, but they're 3 and 4 years old,
Mm-hmm.
They're just not real big. So I guess age is more important, probably. If I'm looking at it, yeah.
It's interesting. I found that, and I'm with you, there's like a bell curve, if that makes sense, where 80% of all hognose fit within the bell curve, and that's a safe range. And then outside of that bell curve, 10% on the, on the front half and 10% on the back half are, out of those parameters. So they'll breed a little earlier than everybody else, or a little younger, or a little smaller. But then you've got 10 on the back half. I have a girl right now that she's either 4 or 5, and she's just breeding for the first time this year. She's been paired for 3 years now. For the first 2 years of her life, well, after 2, she was paired, and nothing happened with good, viable males that went on to pair other females and had viable clutches. So I think some just they're just ready at different times. And then every once in a while you get the random female or male that they break all the odds and they're up to breeding size in, less than a year. And so, I don't think that there's 100%, but I agree with you. Most of them have a certain term. They're adequate, or, maybe not even adequate, maybe more prolific than, earlier or later in life. It's interesting.
Yeah, and they're all going to be different. That's, they all have different attitudes. They all have different feeding, the way they like to eat,
Yeah.
And that's what makes them special,
Yeah.
And some of them are just, hold me, pick me up. Some of them are just, they're all hissy until you pick them up. Yeah, they're all different. And physically, I'm sure they're all different also.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've been looking into a lot of the folks I've been talking to talked about all kinds of stuff. You'll see in a lot of the podcasts where we talk about physiology has become an important topic, because a lot of folks are going, hey, why do the ones that are from this part of the range look different physiologically than those in that part of the range? Comparing like the Montana locality. There's some more recent into the hobby coming out of Montana, like with the sable genes. I think they were discovered in like 06, 07, 08, somewhere in there. So still relatively recent. Texas stuff has been coming out of the wild since, for 30 years. But there's a difference that you can see in a lot of those bloodlines. And then some of the other locales where they've had some stuff come out of New Mexico, Oklahoma. And so anyway, topics of conversation have been interesting, looking at anatomical differences in the wild. And then, even anatomical differences in captivity when we do line breeding or inbreeding and have negative traits come up, bug eyes, all the anomalies that come up. But it's just curious, and I think it's a topic of conversation that a lot of folks are looking at going, what's up with body structure, and what's beneficial, what's detrimental, and then what stuff is just aesthetic. So I find a lot of interest in, just doing some comparative analysis between collections.
Yeah, that's for sure. In my collection, there's a diversity of colors of the same, like you said, brought up the sables. I have jet black sables, and I have light colored sables, that have more green or yellows in them. And, there is a diversity out there, and that's what makes our community cool, is about getting together and helping each other out on that part.
Yeah, and refining too, refining bloodlines. And
yeah.
Like one of the topics of conversation that was kind of cool, and forgive me for kind of jumping on a rabbit trail here, but somebody had talked about a snake that truly has big bug eyes. And their question was, can you outcross that to prevent it? And I thought, man, I don't know that anybody's ever looked into it and said, let's look at a detrimental trait, and can we outcross an animal to something, that's totally unrelated and actually get a bloodline back into good shape without, further perpetuating, stuff that's seen as, cosmetic defect, if you will. They could probably survive just fine in the wild with it. But I don't know, man. It's just, like you said, getting together and figuring stuff out, talking about stuff, outcrossing.
Yeah. Just like, remember when the lavender gene came out?
Yeah.
Everybody was having trouble with it. And then they just kept working with it. I haven't heard anything negative out there. So,
well,
yeah.
And you would know this too, because it's a mutual friend of ours. You remember when Chad crossed the red bloodline into the pink pastels, and everybody was real worried about pink pastels because, I don't know, I saw at least in person probably 7 or 8 animals that had kinks, that had corkscrews, they'd never breed, all kinds of issues. I know Chad was one of the first to the attempt was to get some different blood in there. And I think it really, to be completely honest, rescued the genes, or the gene pool. And I know some other breeders that have been working on that too. And it's just really cool to see everybody come together with a certain goal in mind. And it actually benefits the bloodline, because pastel pink could be gone forever without certain folks looking in and trying to make sure to propagate them.
Yeah, that's a very pretty snake too. So really, I have them in my collection. They're beautiful.
Yeah, they're really neat. I remember ages ago, Chad sent me one, a big old female, man. She must have been 400 grams to breed. And he was like, I can't get anything, but just see if you can, get anything out of her. And long story short, we weren't able to, but that's the part of the community that I like, that, if it doesn't work for one, let's see if we can get somebody else to try something different. And I think that looking at the hobby like that, and utilizing other people can really be a benefit to the whole community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And that's what really counts out of what we've been talking about today, is the quality of animals and taking care of them. That's the number one thing. Is the animal has to come first.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think And that is a common theme, Steve, which is really cool amongst breeders. I know some of us talk, but our community is pretty big. And I've had conversations with those overseas, and it is a very, it's on the forefront right now in everybody's minds about not just chasing morphs and pairing whatever to whatever, but really being selective about the brood stock we have. And so just hearing that's a real encouragement to me, because that's, we're not all becoming hog-nosed puppy mill, where we're just breeding whatever to whatever just to have something to put on a table. We're thinking it through. We're thinking about the animals, thinking about other people. It's just a good thing all the way around.
It sure is. The animals has to be first. That's for sure.
Yep. So jumping into question number 5, another deep question. Any wisdom that you would give to the beginner you? If you could go back right now, and I know your involvement with hognose, like you said, has spanned decades, and encompassing the time that you've been in it since 2016, and then even previous to that. If you could go back to when you very first started keeping hognose, what information that you've had to white knuckle and you've had the School of Hard Knocks go through would you give to your beginner self to help you be a better keeper or breeder?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Probably persistence. Always try to be, don't give up and stay persistent on what your goals are. Because you're going to have setbacks, and I had setbacks then. I still do now. And like you said, if it's egg binding or an escape or sometimes they go on permanent vacation and you just never find them again.
Yeah.
And it happens to all of us.
Yep.
Or you find them in a shoe all dried up.
Yep.
But yeah, that's looking back at it. Just stay in the course. Stay with your goals. Take care of your animals the best way you can, and stay persistent.
Yeah, man, that's wisdom right there that, I would give myself too, because it was always like every time I hit a roadblock or something happened, it was like, I'm done, man. I'm done with hognose. I'm done with, and then here I'd come back around, and I can't tell you how many times I've unloaded. Right. You know how it is.
Oh, I sure do. Yep, I had an incubator last year, and I lost, I think, 60 eggs, and it was not a big year, but at the same time, that was still a lot of money, and especially what I had in it. But just that quick malfunction, and it burned them all up. And I was gone at the Daytona Reptile Show last season, right when that happened, But you just pull your britches up and keep going.
Yeah, honestly, man, I remember you telling me that story, and I thought, Stephen may be out after this, because I remember it was just heart-wrenching,
Yeah, it was.
But what a testimony. Now you come back and, we're talking a year later, almost a year now, and here you are ready to hammer it again. I think that's just a testament to the fact of, you're living what you're preaching, or what you would preach to your former self. So that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, we're not making widgets. We're not making a wooden object or a statue, or we're making, these are live animals, and the live animals have problems and issues, and they can die, and that's why we have to take care of them the best way we can.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Some of the other stuff we've talked about before in some of the other podcasts are hard questions, hard things that we're dealing with. One of the things somebody brought up was what happens when you have an animal that you buy as a baby and they look fine, and then they get to adulthood and there's issues. And a lot of times the breeder can't be blamed for that either, other than, maybe just making sure what brood stock they had to begin with. But what do you do as a breeder when, you've worked hard and taken care of an animal that, you paid well for too, and they either can't breed, or they have health issues, or something genetic, maybe cosmetic issues you don't want to pass on, just things that kind of develop through time. You kind of feel stuck with what you've got. The beautiful thing that I've heard from at least 2 breeders was that when they got the babies, they made a commitment to those animals for life. Man, I mean, it just blows my mind. I know you're there too because you've expressed the same sentiment. I've got there too, man, and there's a sting to it. It's like, here I've invested this time, this money, whatever, and now the animal, there's some detriment to it, but we make a commitment to them. And honestly, they're not that expensive to feed. I did research and I thought, if I have to hold on to this male that I expected to be my breeder, if I had to purchase mice, it cost me like $37 a year to feed him once a week. You know, it's not a terrible expense, you know, and then space. If you've got racks, it's not like it's a terrible amount of space either. But I do, you know, want everybody to know that's here, you know, especially with me and Steven and then all the breeders, we've all gone through things that have been heartache and that have rocked the boat and made us want to just say, I'm going to move on to widgets or statues or, you know, something inanimate, because there is a challenge, you know, dealing with live stuff. But
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yeah, I think that it's made us who we are today, hasn't it, man?
Yeah, that's for sure. That's for sure. And, you know, I mean, you put 3 years into a female and then, you know, and something happens to her. I mean, that could be the end of your project.
That's right.
You know, and that's why it's important to get 2.2 of the animals, or, you know, 2.3, you know, in case, you know, something happens along that line. And yeah, it could be a lot more up front, but then at the other end, if they all make it or they all do well for you, you're sitting that much better. But if one male dies or one male gets out, or something happens to them, you know, you're not dead in the water with that. And a perfect example is I bought a pair of Mexicanas, and about a year later the male escaped and never seen him again. So I went out and bought me another one, and raised him up to 2 or 3 years, and I was putting them in there together, and the female killed them, you know, and there again, I'm sitting there with no eggs. I've got all this time invested in the female in this, but yeah, I mean, it's just that quick and easy that, you know, it could be, you got to be persistent. You got to say, okay, what's next? What can I do now? And, you know, and happened to be on that project, I had 2 females, and my buddy Chad Fuchs up there in Milwaukee, he had 2 males. So we just swapped out, and we each got a pair. You know, so you got to stay persistent, take care the best way you can of the animals, and, you know, they'll take care of you.
Yeah, I remember my first, and you're right on that, man. And it reminds me, I remember my first pair of albinos I bought from Richard Evans, and they were yearlings. So he said, you know, my babies are 1,500. You remember those days? You mentioned that earlier. Oh, yeah. Well, he wanted 2,000 apiece, and I had worked all summer long and had enough money, and you know, needed to make a business purchase for you know, tax purposes, and so I was like, I'm going to buy, you know, 4,350, because, you know, he had to charge tax on it and whatever. So big, that was the biggest expense I'd ever had in hognose. And I remember I paired them and never got anything out of them. And I was really frustrated with it. And then like 2 years later, the female ended up dying and never bred. And then the male, he was a part of a breeding loan I had with a guy, and the guy basically killed my whole collection because he wasn't taking care of it. You know, every time I'd reach out to him on the phone, he's like, oh yeah, everything's doing great. And I was like, cool, I want to meet up with you this weekend to see him. Nope, you can't come see him. And then by the time I did see him, literally it was just bits and pieces of the collection left because he wasn't even watering them or anything. It was horrible. And it was situations like that that challenged me to say, you know what, I'm going to learn everything I can about them to try to breed them better and be more diligent. So that was a very humbling time for me. And so anybody that's out there listening and you're going, man, I've tried everything and I just can't seem to get any traction, keep trying. Keep learning, keep experimenting, keep trying new things. I was listening to a video last year that Jermaine was talking about something that he was doing with his animals. And I was like, you know what? I've never, in my 29 years of breeding, 28 at that time, I was like, I've never thought about doing, and I don't even remember what it was, but I'm just saying we can learn anything from anybody and always try new things if something's not working for you. And point being, just be open to trying new stuff. Like Steven said here, just be consistent. You get knocked down, every one of us does. Get back up on the horse and ride it. Accomplish your goals, whatever goal you have in hognose or hognose breeding. Well, we're going to have to wrap that up. We're almost at 30 minutes here and a little longer, but some real good information. Steven, I just want to say, man, thank you so much for hopping on here with me and sharing this good information with everybody. And just so everybody knows, in the description below, you'll see Steven's contact info and Morph Market account, and check with him to see what kind of availability he may have.
Yeah, right now I'm all sold out. Yep, I'm doing pretty good.
Hey, that's a good problem to have, if it's even a problem.
The new batch. Yep. And one more real quick thing.
Sure.
When building your collection, just don't get overwhelmed with too many too fast. Because, did that friend of yours just say that that he took all those animals, to breed? Did he overwhelm himself and couldn't take care of them? Sometimes life gets busy, and it does get busy. But don't overwhelm yourself with the work involved in your collection. Only give yourself the time in your collection. That's how much time you can give it.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Kevin, I appreciate you today.
Yes, sir. Been a good time. Thanks again for tuning into the Hognose One podcast. If you're a hog pod or you just want to share with anyone you know, we are offering a discount code for our books via our book printer, Book Baby. So just punch in code 2024 at checkout for any of our Hognose titles. I've got a couple other titles on there you can check out as well.